Prince. Rest in peace. Yep, my guest is a real big Prince fan. So when she finds out I did what I just did, hopefully I'll bring her some joy. All right. So my guest this week is a friend of mine named Karli. Some of my listeners may know who Karli is. We'll just use Karli's first name. I like to give them some privacy in their life. I'm the only one who's got to be on blast. So we'll do that and call Karli here now in just a few seconds.
Hello.
Hey, Karli.
Hey.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I got this new setup here. The phone's kind of far away from me, but I think it works. So I'm super excited. I haven't talked to you.
Are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't talked to you since, you made your move.
Yeah, we haven't talked in a long time.
Yeah, and we ain't got, talk about that on here, but I just wanted to say.
No.
I just wanted to say I haven't talked to you since, and I used to talk to you all the time, so there is a bit of a void, And
in your heart?
In my heart, a little bit, You said to me, I think these were your exact words, "Hey, Matt, this isn't the place. This place isn't what connects us," or something like that. Do you remember saying?
Right.
Do you remember saying that to me?
I don't remember saying those exact words, but I remember the sentiment of feeling that. Yes.
Yeah, it was like this place isn't what connects us. So I just want you to know that I'm a little. I feel kind of a way about not talking to you. So I was like, baby.
I see. So this is actually a conversation where you're reprimanding me for not keeping up my end of our friendship.
No. I'm just trying to convey to you that I miss you. That's all I'm saying.
You can do that. You can do that without reprimanding me.
I'm not. I promise. I'm not trying to. I want you to know. I feel a way about you, and that's a good way. And
okay.
Having that way, just hasn't been there. So I'm just a little sad. That's all.
We could make more of an effort, couldn't we?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I'll leave that alone. I want to talk about a few other things, but I'll do that whenever I can catch you. Because you're busy. You're a busy person.
Am I?
I think you're busy. Out there.
Okay.
Out there doing things.
All I do is mind my business.
Yeah. But no, I really do miss you. I'll quit beating that dead horse.
No, I miss you too.
Yeah, I've known you for quite some time. I mean, not as well as I've gotten to know you in the more recent years, but I think I've known you for, was it 7 years?
I was going to guess 8. When
8?
is...
Yeah, I don't say
I can't
the place.
Remember exactly. Yeah, no. Whenever that place began for you is how long we've known each other. How long is that?
It's been 8 years.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. And so, you weren't always really nice to me, but I was,
That's not true. That's not the truth.
No, you're a very open, honest, and direct person. And I'm glad you decided to do this because we had talked about it before, and I always thought you had interesting things to say about anything. If we're being honest. Hey, I got to ask you: Did you finish Game of Thrones?
Yes, I did.
So I mean,
you and I are going to. Okay, no, you go first.
It was a big letdown for me because it just felt incomplete. It felt rushed. Like, spoiler alert for everybody who hasn't seen it. I don't know why you haven't seen it at this point. If you haven't seen it, that's your fault.
Yeah, they don't even deserve a spoiler alert. Like, if you care about it, we're talking about it.
You would have seen it. I totally believe that Daenerys could have got where she got, but not that fast.
Mm-hmm.
I think she could have maybe gotten there, but I still have a hard time believing that she would have killed innocent people. You know?
Yeah. Okay. So, listen, I could talk about this all day. I agree with that. I agree with that, and I don't. I think she could have got exactly where she got, exactly, including killing innocent people. But they needed longer. And the reason I think she could have got exactly there is I think that she sort of says it, I think, before it all goes down. Like, she says something about she felt like she was, I can't remember how she worded it, but she felt like if there were people there that were innocent being given up for the good of a greater good.
Uh-huh.
She didn't say it in that way, but she did say that. So I think she would have got exactly where she got. I think they needed more time. I read HBO said they could have 2 or 3 more years, and they said they only needed this 1 year.
What?
I read a tweet about that, and that I find that bothers me, actually. Like, I'll be honest, like, a lot of people were super angry about the whole season. I'm not angry about it. I think, towards the end of the 7th season, I was starting to feel, you too, we both were starting to feel this isn't going well. Like, it's not as good as it was.
Right.
I think it went way too fast. But let me tell you this thing I read. I can't even remember the person who said this, so I'm kind of plagiarizing something right now. But this guy, I read a series of tweets about how he was talking about how there are 2 different types of writers, right? People who outline things and have a basic story that they have to follow, and the other kind of writer is someone who is very character driven, and when you write your characters well, sometimes you get lost in the story and you don't know how to make the story happen because all you know how to do is make these characters do what they would do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, and basically what happens is if you're a TV show writer, you have to be the kind of person that outlines and tells a story and gets to different points. And if you're the author of these books, you're character driven and you're following these characters are taking you places as a writer rather than you taking a story somewhere. The main point of this whole series of tweets was if you are trying to reach certain points of a story and you're not quite sure your characters can get there, but you have to get there, you sacrifice a little bit of your character's behaviorisms or even ideals, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, and that you can see that's what happened, and you can see that George R.R. Martin is a character-driven writer, and TV show writers can't be like that to the degree that we would like them to be if we like character-driven stories.
Yeah, but don't you see it though sometimes? Like, you'll see some movies do it or shows do it really well. And like Game of Thrones did it well for a while.
Yeah, I agree. Or, I was going to bring this up, but Mad Men did that perfectly.
Mad Men was incredible. I watched it again the other day.
Good. Listen, I've watched it like 6 times. I finally got my dad to start watching it.
Yeah.
So I feel triumphant in the world. But, and then I didn't know this for a long time, but I recently found out that not just the head writer, but a lot of writers on The Sopranos are the same writers on Mad Men. And you could really, really see that Tony Soprano and Don Draper have so many similarities once you know that.
I didn't know that. Wow. Now that I think about that, I can kind of see that just immediately thinking about it.
And the funny thing about this is many people hated the ending of Sopranos and many people hated the ending of Mad Men. I'm not either of those people. I was happy with both. But that's what happens when stories are highly character driven. In those stories, I think what people in Mad Men and in Sopranos, I think what people were mad about is that the characters don't have a big arc, that they do remain the same as who they are. And in Game of Thrones, there was too fast of a switch in her character, and that's what people were mad about. So that's really interesting to me.
Yeah, my two issues were pretty much the same thing you're saying. Like, the thing I don't get is them saying they had to wrap it up. I'm like, says who? Like, everybody's watching.
Right.
Like
more people than anything else in like history.
Yeah, like everybody's watching. So like, what's the rush other than maybe people don't want to do it anymore? And Amy said this. Amy was like, "Yo, if they don't want to do it anymore, if they're tired, bring on new people.
Exactly, and
just hand it off."
Yeah, there's people that definitely. See, the thing about that is, like, there's a concern when you try to ask new people to do something if they'll keep up the work of the previous people. But if you're tired and sick of it, your work is not going to be anywhere near someone with fresh eyes. So, yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
I don't know if that was the case. I think they got a little scared. I mean, I don't know.
What, like it got too big?
Yeah, like they got a little afraid of not being able to do it, which they weren't. Like, I think this is totally a maybe out of nowhere assumption, but maybe they were a little afraid of being able to do it, and that caused them to do a really shitty job. And they're like, as long as we do it fast. I don't know. I mean, I can't. It was not. I'll say this. Like, instead of just talking about the finale, like the season as a whole.
Yeah.
The first episode back. This is coming from the expectation of where we were in season 7, which, I already did not have high hopes at that point.
Yeah, I didn't like season 7 either.
Yeah, but the first episode was okay. They got the telling Jon he was really a Targaryen thing out of the way fast. They recapped the things fast enough in the first episode. It was fine. It was mediocre. The second episode, I can't remember if you said you liked that or not. I actually thought the second episode right before the long night or the battle was really good. Like, it was very much like we're wrapping up, we're saying goodbye to people, it was like a wrap-up episode, but it was relatively well done in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I hadn't checked out by then. I checked out on the third episode.
Yeah. Well, the long night was the third episode, right? The battle was the third episode. To be honest with you, if it had ended there, I think we might have been more okay than what happened after that. Because the long night, like, a lot of people didn't like that, or they didn't like that Arya was the one or whatever. I was still okay. I was like, I'm satisfied with all this stuff. Yes, it was outlandish that she came out of nowhere, but they did a little bit of foreshadowing. Like, that was the same spot Jon was when he said, "How are you sneaking up on me like this?" Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I mean, it was all right. And her getting that after, like, you know how I feel, a whole season of her doing, like, Karate Kid.
Oh, yeah, you were super pissed about that. You were like, what the fuck is this?
I'm like, you're with the story all along, but there's no point to it. She just gets up and leaves. Yes, you know how. So, like, maybe that for me could be the culmination of her going through all that she then killed the Night King and saved the whole world. Like, okay, I'm still okay. Like, it's not great. It's season 7 level. Not season 1, any season before that level, but it was still okay. The next episode, where we're going to talk to Cersei again, like, why the hell do we need to talk to her again? We already said all this. That conversation meant nothing.
Yeah.
Everything fell apart for me there. So, like, you went into the bay and got ambushed, but you had dragons which fly overhead. Like, how did you get ambushed?
Right, like you didn't
How did
see
you
that.
Not fly? And see, that's the crazy part, because the battle before that. Okay, so one thing the show has done well. I'm getting on my high horse. One thing the show has done well, though, is, like, they've shown you battle scenes that are highly realistic historically. Okay,
yeah. Like
when they did Battle of the Bastards, and I don't care about. Yeah, I don't care about battle scenes. I don't care about war scenes. I'm very girly about stuff like that. It's not that interesting to me. But those scenes were interesting to me because of the realism, the historical realism, right?
Yeah.
So that, like, Jon Snow almost suffocating, or like these people standing in front of each other, like the warfare and how realistic they made that and how studied it was really cool. So even the long night, or whatever it was called, the last battle, it still brought something from that same idea, right? Because it was the first time they were showing, like, aerial warfare. Yeah, it was with dragons, but if you take if you think about historically how different warfare became because of planes, like they're really doing something with that part of the story.
Okay.
So like these dragons flying around shooting at people, as insane and outlandish as that is, it also speaks back to the first time they had aerial warfare in real life, right?
Yeah.
So you showed us that, and in the very next episode, you got ambushed in a bay when you had things that could fly and check ahead.
But you
and
were fighting. But you were fighting in the dark.
Right. And then also, just the most important thing for me to say about this is, how did they get Missandei?
I don't know. It's just one of those things. They're like, plot. We need this to happen.
That's right. Missandei and Grey Worm were like the thing that kept me watching these last 2 seasons. I think they should have had their own show. Everything about them was perfect. And then they killed Missandei, which I knew my people were gonna die. Okay, I knew Missandei wasn't gonna make it, but she died in the worst episode I've ever watched, and that was terrible. I mean, let me just also say, in the very first episode of Game of Thrones, I mean, I don't even think I need to point this out, but in the very first episode of Game of Thrones, there's a scene when the Lannisters have just arrived to Winterfell, and Robert Baratheon says something about, like, he wants to go see, like, Lyanna's grave or whatever.
Yeah.
And Cersei specifically says, we've been traveling for months. The dead can wait, or something like that. Like, you don't need to go do that.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And the point is, they've been traveling to get from Winterfell to King's Landing, or vice versa, takes months. Like, the show didn't need to point that out. That's how it worked.
Yeah.
But now, do you know how many times they've been back and forth between Winterfell and King's Landing in this last season? And I just, like, besides everything else that I could say about it, Cersei would have had 3 kids by then. And her hair damn sure would have grown out.
You think she was really pregnant?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know does it even matter? That's another, like, why? I think the more important question, whether she was really pregnant or not, the more important question is, why did they even have the pregnancy be a thing? Was it a factor? Did it matter? Why was it part of the story? The whole thing. I will say at the very last, I know no one agrees with me on this, but the very last episode, after a trash season, the very last episode was as decent as it could be. I know nobody agrees with that, but take away, I don't necessarily want Bran to be king, but everyone else in their place, like Tyrion as the Hand and Brienne, like everyone at that table at the end was a worthwhile scene for me. Like it gave me a little laugh when he made that same joke about the donkey in the beehive or honeycomb or whatever he said. Like that, some of that stuff was fine with me. Jon going out into the beyond the wall, like all that stuff was kind of especially Sansa saying the North's going to be independent. Like some of that stuff, it was wrapped up like a Disney movie, but I still also am sort of fine with all of it. After a completely trash season, they ended it as best as they could, and I'm fine with thinking that things ended up that way. I think it took way too long to get there.
I think it could have. Like, I think things could have actually got there, like with Daenerys, but it was so quick. You're like, what? Like whiplash. I'm like, whoa.
Right. Because the scene where she's at the end and she makes this speech and she's going to take over the world and make sure everyone's free, like that scene could have happened a season or 2 later. Yeah, like I agree. Yeah. But I think they had a hard time. Someone said, or I read somewhere, I haven't read the books, but I have read, and I don't know how accurate this is, that in the books, Daenerys is still in Meereen. So George R. R. Martin,
they're really far ahead of that.
Right. And George R. R. Martin seems not to know, by some people's judgments, seems not to know how to get her out of there. And that's excellent. Once you know that and then you watch the show, you see how strange it is, how quickly she abruptly leaves there. And then even Tyrion says, like, you don't need to go, just be queen of here. And her boyfriend, Dario, whatever, says something similar to that.
Yeah, so that's like the point I was making that you made just like a few minutes ago, and I've been saying the same thing for years, not just with Game of Thrones, but with all these other shows where I'm like, you just said it differently, where I'm like, I think movies and shows are bad when the, how do I say this? When the writers serve the story, I think it's good because they're going wherever the story leads them. But when the story serves the writers, then the story's going wherever the writers want it to go.
Yeah, that's basically what I was saying about. And I think the reason that theory was so interesting to me is because I feel like that's when I write something, I have a hard time making people reach the points they're supposed to reach in the storyline because I care so much about characters, and you can see that in the things I watch and read and stuff and that's just the funny thing is you take something like Avengers, which is supposed to be like fluffy action and nobody's supposed to care too much about these characters.
Wait, did you like Endgame?
How well I did you not?
Oh, I loved it.
Okay, yeah.
I just want to see where you were
at. Obsessed with it as I'm not as obsessed with it as you are, but what I can say about it is, as someone who not even as someone who, if comic book movies, if you want to reduce it to that, are supposed to be about action and silliness and not a lot of character development, why did, like, Endgame especially, that's part of the flaw of when Game of Thrones came out at the same time as Endgame. Because
yeah, the same weekend.
Development in Game of Thrones.
It was the same weekend.
Yeah, and Endgame had more. By the end of Game of Thrones, I cared more about most of the people in Avengers, including Thanos, than I did about Daenerys Targaryen.
Wait, I got to tell you something real quick, and I'm sorry, Caitlin, for saying your name, but Caitlin, I won't say your last name. So she was mad. Well, she wasn't mad, but she was giving me a little hell about me being so hard on Game of Thrones. I think that was the battle, whatever the Winterfell last night was, whatever that was. I was killing it. I was like just murdering it. And she was like, why are you, like, what's the big deal? And she hadn't seen Endgame yet. And then she saw Endgame. It was like, and she like texted me like from the theater, like, oh my God, I get it. I get it.
Said that to me. I will say that you are going overboard. Like, I'm on her side a little bit. You gotta shut up. No, I'm just kidding. But don't be a person, and I know you are, don't be a person who says, let's sign a petition to read whatever. Just live with it and move on with your life.
I was so mad. I was so mad. I feel like I've given so many years and so much time to Game of Thrones.
I think we'll always have seasons 1 through 6.
She said, don't be that guy. I feel so stupid now.
No, I'm just like you gotta take a step back.
Don't be that guy.
But if you end the show on season 6, isn't that just Daenerys arriving at Dragonstone and whoa, the possibilities? What could happen? And
it's funny you say that. If you end it
there, it's still great. It's still great.
It's funny you say that because I swear it's like season 7 and 8. I'm kind of already not wiping from my memory, but it's just kind of like, like that didn't happen.
I mean, they're honestly not that memorable. It'll be easy for them to be.
Yeah.
Escape your memory.
I'm like, that doesn't really happen. Yeah, this is whatever. Wow. Well,
it could be just a whole plot to make us all want to read the books now.
Yeah, I mean, I tried the books on tape once, and it was too much. I was like, I don't have time for this. I was like, I'm gonna have to really like carve out some years to do this. But
so
I really want to. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, those books on tape. That is like one actor doing a bunch of different voices. Did you know that?
No.
It's weird.
Wow.
It's weird. And he's talented, but in a strange way.
Yeah, I want to know, like, how did it really end? So I'm probably going to read the books now whenever he gets it done or whatever happens next. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then they're making a series about, I think, 10,000 years before this. I was like, I'm not doing it. I can't.
Yeah,
I can't.
I don't know.
I mean, if it looks super good, maybe. I don't know. I just don't want to do it again.
Are they the writers?
No, they gave those clowns, and yeah, I'll call them clowns. I'm sorry. Uh, those guys, they gave him a Star Wars trilogy,
Oh, great.
but it's not like Luke Skywalker or Darth Vader. They said go create a whole new Star Wars world. And it's somewhere far away from the Skywalker family. So people were
So
signing a petition to like get them off of it.
I'm sure.
Don't let
So
them
not
do
to
it.
get off on a tangent, but are they still trying to do that Confederate show?
I heard that got killed because
Okay.
like
Okay.
there was a lot of uproar about it. They were like, "Yo, you can't have two
Right.
white dudes do this. You just can't."
I don't know if you could have anyone do it. The only way that would work, it certainly couldn't be written by only white people, but the only way that would work is if there was some commentary in it about how slavery ultimately turned into, well, American slavery ultimately turned into the prison system. You know what I mean? Like
what it
if
is
there
now.
was if there was some commentary about how, and I don't know how you would do it. That's why I sound crazy, but some commentary about how our modern prison system and how closely related it is to slavery and how it derives from that. And if slavery never ended, how would that look different? But I don't think those guys had that in their mind at all. And I don't think anyone has that in their mind besides the people who made the 13th. But I mean, like,
So
that would be the only way that would be a story.
So you're saying like it almost ends up kind of how it is now?
Yeah, if
Wow.
don't you think, like, or even, yeah, how different could it be? Honestly.
That would be nuts.
Yeah.
Oh my
Maybe I
God,
shouldn't have-
Carly.
Maybe I shouldn't have said that here, and I should be writing it myself. Oh wait, but I'm not the authority on it. But no, you and I should collaborate and write.
Oh
that.
my
But no, I
God.
do. Yeah.
Wouldn't that be crazy?
To be honest, when I heard they were making it, now this was before these later seasons, and I wondered if that was what, having a lot more respect for them as writers, and I wondered if that's what the premise would be. The fact that they didn't say anything about that when people were like protesting against it lets me know that's not the way they were looking to do it. Like, no one wants to watch Gone with the Wind 2019. Like, that's no. But a story about, if you could find a way to talk about this Union and the Confederacy still being separate, Confederacy still keeping slavery, and how that would compare to what slavery turned into in the United States, how close they would be, that would be a story I'd be interested in.
That would
That would
be
be a social
nuts.
commentary that would be, yeah, I mean, that would be eye-opening.
I'm speechless.
Someone's going to see. Okay, we got to start writing this, Matt. Someone's going to steal this.
Oh my God. I mean, okay. Oh my God. Oh my God. Could you imagine watching that show?
I can't. That's what I'm. So I've thought of that since I first heard of that. In fact, I think you said to me, like, can you believe they're trying to make this show? And all I could think was, when I heard about it, I didn't think of it the way all these, like you or anyone else thought. This sounds terrible and horrific, and why would they make this? Because I thought, listen, if you make a show about the Confederacy still being the same as it was and just evolving past that, you're making Gone with the Wind, right? Like, you're making some kind of glorification of a despicable time in the country's history.
Yeah.
But if you, which I don't know, the reason I didn't imagine that's what they meant is because I can't imagine anyone wanting to make that. But obviously I'm an idiot and I'm not idealistic. But why would you not, like, the only interesting way to make that would be what I said. Like, how similar would it be to what we already have?
Yeah, like maybe it's not exactly the same, but maybe it's close enough where you're like, oh my God, that's where we live.
Right. Because the real difference here would be how people perceive it and not really what's actually happening. Maybe not perception, but like outward conversation about it. Like, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, you
There's
do.
something to be explored there. There's something to be explored there.
God damn, you're smart.
Yeah. If I was smart, I would have already made this, and I'd be on your podcast telling you about how rich I am for making this story, or how hated I am.
But we don't have those resources. It's all rigged. I don't know.
It is all rigged.
I mean,
I
don't know. God, that was a great segue. I mean, we're like 30 minutes in. And I'm like, oh my God, how are we going to get to anything even remotely close to what we wanted to talk about?
Yeah.
You just did it.
Okay, well, good.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Have you seen any of, what's that show on Netflix? Now They See Us, or They See Us, or Now, what is it called?
I have not.
You know what I'm talking about?
I do know what you're talking about. Have you watched it?
I just caught a few minutes of the first episode, and Amy was like, I really want to watch this, but just really don't want to do that right now. Because you know what's in it, and you know how it's going to go. It's just going to, especially when you got kids, little brown kids.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
It like really fucks with you, and you're like, it's not just entertainment. This is like people's fucking lives. So,
yeah, I mean, think of the way you felt every time someone has been killed by the police. And I feel like now we're just going to watch a few hours. I don't know. I'm going to watch it. Like, of course I'm going to watch it. I don't know if I'm emotionally prepared for it right now.
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, I haven't seen the whole thing yet. I think it's only like 4 or 5 episodes. And what I did find immediately informative about it was, okay, so I grew up in middle-class America. You know, that's where I'm from. And you hear about things like good cop and bad cop and like all those jokes in movies and all that. Mm-hmm. It really gave me a little more insight into how that really works. And it was just interesting to me because I was like, damn, like I'm 39 years old and I'm looking at it like, man, that cop might be really trying to help him. When they're doing the good cop, bad cop thing, where they got like, they got the guy, literally, they got a cop coming in the room beating up on the kid, like literally beating the kid up, like kicking and punching the kid. Yeah. The other cop comes in, hey, get out of here, man. Just leave that kid alone. Man, you all right? You want to get you some help? You need something to drink? Yeah. You need something, like really like getting in their corner. Oh, you know, so what happened? You know, I'm sitting here a grown ass man, like I paused and I had to think about it.
Yeah, I mean,
can you imagine what if you're a kid or just a not intelligent person?
Or just a scared person who lives in this world where police... The thing there is to say about police that people, I think, are less focused on is the police are supposed to be serving the people. Mm-hmm. And literally no one feels that way. What they feel is that it is fear of the police. They feel that we live in a police state, that the police are part of our government, however much they care about the government. They feel like the police run things. And they're not wrong in very practical ways because, yes. But in truth, that is not the way it's supposed to be for any of us. None of us are supposed to have to feel afraid of the police. Like, and that's not to say that we all don't. Or certainly if you're black or brown, there's not maybe more to be afraid of. Why'd I say maybe? There's not more to be afraid of. Mm-hmm. But somehow at the base of all of this, that is something that's lost. And the people that made it be lost is the police, right? So no one remembers that these are public servants. We should not have to be any more afraid of the police than we are of a firefighter. They're not different. An ambulance driver. Mm-hmm. They're all here supposed to be serving us. The people who think that's different is, from my estimation and observation, the police, they think that's different. They think they're in charge, and they have weapons to back them on that.
Yeah, I guess that's the brand they sell because we all feel it. Where's that
Right.
where's
and
that
I
coming
don't,
from?
Well, and this goes exactly back to what the same thing as what slavery turned into. What we were talking about a minute ago. Like, it's not a police state unless you're black, right?
Right.
Our country is not a police state unless you're black. Maybe that's a little bit of a generalization, but not much of one.
No, I mean, white people and black people feel different about the cops, generally speaking.
And you know what's funny about that is, I think you mean that in a different way than I'm about to say it.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree with the way you mean it. But let me tell you something funny about me.
Hey, wait, I'm sorry, everybody. Karli's.
Oh God.
You're well, how would you like me? Caucasian, white? Like how do you want to be identified as? Because I hate saying white
okay.
because it's not even a real thing to me. It is a real thing.
A real thing? I don't think race is a real thing. Race is only a real thing because we all believe it. Race is the thing that we believe in the same way we believe that the police are in charge. Like, everyone believes it, but it has no real truth to it. But okay.
Just so they know who you are, like who they're listening to. Because I know
did Ancestry. I did Ancestry DNA. Do you want to know what I am?
Yeah, what are you?
White mixed with other kinds of white.
Get the fuck out of here.
Someone gave me that as a Christmas present, Ancestry DNA, and I said, like, okay, it's cool, it's going to be interesting or whatever, but it was, how you see those commercials and people, the, like, crazy white supremacy, or not maybe commercials, but little documentary shorts where the people are, like, super white supremacists, and then they do some kind of DNA testing and they find out they're whatever they are racist against. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I've heard of that, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, so most people are so mixed with so many things, they can't even begin to know all the things that they are, which is kind of why white supremacy is, aside, like, if take away everything glaringly wrong with it and just think about it as a base, like, simple idea. It's the most ridiculous, absurd idea in the world because people are so mixed up with so many things, right?
Right.
But whenever I took this stupid ancestry thing, I'm like 50% Irish and like 30% British or something. How much concentrated white is hilarious. It was very amusing to me.
Okay, but okay. Do you remember what you were saying? I didn't want to get you too far off of that. You were saying something about the police, or no? We feel differently about the police. White people, black people.
Yeah, white people, I think, feel. And listen, we're making a lot of generalizations, but we're making generalizations based on the things we've observed in the society, in the media, in whatever, right?
Right.
So yeah, I think that. So this is going to be a weird story. Okay, so my dad, I grew up with my dad being like, the police think that they're running things. They don't run anything. They can't really tell you what to do as long as you're not breaking the law. He was not a fan of police. I say that in less verbal ways and more subtle ways, I was kind of raised to think cops they're self-important assholes. That's what I kind of, and I'm not saying he ever said that, but that was certainly the temperature that was set. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I said a lot of wild things to police officers pulling me over for driving too fast because I've never been afraid of cops. Right.
Right.
So that in and of itself is interesting because for me, I've never had any fear of cops. I always wonder why I think they're glorified. I'm going to be so offensive right now. I think they're glorified security guards. I have no real respect for that position. That's not to say there aren't some respectable police officers. I know one personally. Like, so don't take that too out of context. Just from like a position of how I grew up and the way I kind of thought about it viscerally, I was kind of like, cops mean nothing. They're nothing to be afraid of. I don't like them. I'm not afraid of them. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So, which is very, like, obviously, that's not the way everyone can grow up. That in itself is a privilege to think that way. But the interesting thing about it is my dad told me when I was an adult, so not while I was growing up, like not something that I experienced while I was growing up, but he told me that he was talked to by his father about police. He grew up in kind of a small town with not a lot of money. And his dad told him one day, listen, if you get pulled over by the police, if you get stopped by the police in any situation, just do whatever they tell you to do because they can do anything they want to you because all you are is poor trash to them. And that's not a conversation that I think is very different from what most young Black people hear. Am I too far off on that?
No, I mean, that's how we were raised. Like I said, we were in middle class
Right.
America, so we were like
Right.
well, I mean, I wouldn't say
Right.
that's even more dangerous, but like all of our white neighbors, like not all of them, but most of them hated us. And so we had to behave and act a certain way in the neighborhood. Mom and dad told us things like don't run between their houses. You know, at this hour, come in, cops
Right.
in the neighborhood, you know, cooperate. Don't do anything that might scare them or, you know, all that conversation.
So I thought it was really interesting as an adult. Like I said, I never heard that growing up. I never knew that's what he heard until we started having conversations about this probably after my son was born. That's probably around the time we started talking about it.
Mm-hmm. And hold on, your son is biracial.
Right. His
Okay.
dad is Black.
Yeah, they don't know that, so I want to make sure.
True. I'm not. Yeah. So it was an interesting thing for me to hear something from him that I had heard from so many people that I was friends with that, you know, that I didn't grow up with, that I never knew he felt that way. I never knew that's what he heard. And I think it explains to me why he felt the way he did and why he talked to me the way he did about it. Because he was told, like, be afraid, they can do whatever they want. And he was like, his reaction to that, and I'm kind of speaking for him here, but his reaction to that was to be like, nah, fuck them. I'm not going to be afraid of someone. And again, what a privilege for him to be able to say that, right?
Right.
So then, like, years later, a couple summers ago, my cousin on my dad's side, so those are the white ones. Just kidding. All my family's white, remember? No, but my cousin says he has a daughter that at the time was like 13, and he's a gun owner, and she's trained to use a gun, and he was telling my dad about how he was telling her, if someone comes into the house, you know where the gun is, you know where the ammo is, like, you just shoot them. You don't have to worry about anything. You don't have to worry about what the police would say to you. You're a 13-year-old girl. Like, you shoot first and ask questions later if someone enters our house. Because there's no consequences that are going to come to you. And what he was just saying is, I'm protecting my daughter. And she's, like, from his point of view, he's saying, I want my daughter to be safe, right?
Right.
And I'm just, like, sitting there thinking, what these people don't understand, meaning my cousin or anyone else talking to their white kids like that, is I cannot say the same thing to my son, even in our own house. I couldn't say, shoot first and ask questions later. They're never gonna say you were the one in the wrong. Like, that's what white people with white children and, you know, who don't have to think about the other side of this, that's what they don't understand. And It's not even a slight to him, because how would he know? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So he says to me, like, are you going to have Dylan learn how to use a gun and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I think you need to think about how different it is. The same scenario you just described to me, how different that would be if it were Dylan. And he's like, yeah, that's a good point I didn't think about. But then he said, don't you want to be part of the thing that changes that narrative? And that's an interesting thing to ask someone. Yeah, sure, let's change that narrative, but not with my son. Not with my friends, not with any of the people that I love. That's the part. And you and I kind of talked about that before with, like years ago, remember that stop and frisk video? And that kid is talking to,
Yeah.
Like that's the thing. Even he's saying something about, if I make a sacrifice to be an example that changes things, isn't that worth it? And no, not if you're my kid, not if you're someone that I love. It's not worth it.
Why do you think it's so hard? I'm just genuinely curious kind of here. I have an idea. I have my own answers, but I just like to get other people's perspectives. So it's not just the black and white thing, but why do you think it is so difficult for people to put themselves in other people's shoes? That's with anything. Like, it's so hard to see something from another person's perspective. And it's crazy because, like, I think one of the tricky things about it for me and what I've seen is, like, whatever ideas you have as a person, all your ideas are like self-validated by your reality, because you can validate anything you think based on your world. Like, well, this thing because of this, or, it's like people can't get outside of their own mind. And I make an effort to do that personally. And because, like, Amy used to crack me all the time on women stuff. Where I would be like, nah, this thing or whatever. And she'd be like, no, Matt, no, stop. Like, think, listen to me. And I had to sit down and be like, oh, shit. And I even heard Dave Chappelle put it an interesting way one time where he said, I think it was one of his more recent stand-ups, where he said something to the effect that he was doing comedy for, like, thugs and gangsters on the street. And somebody, you may have heard this, where, like, one of them gave him like $10,000 or something, and he had a backpack, and he put that $10,000 in his backpack.
Right.
And he was walking home or on the train, and it was a real compelling story, because you're like, he's got all this money in his backpack, and then he was like, "That's what it's like to be a woman."
Yeah.
And it was like,
and yeah, I mean, it's funny because, well, first of all, so many things. Why can't people put themselves in other people's shoes? You've just stated make an effort to do that. Do you think you're successful?
To some degree.
Yeah,
I think more than most.
Even the fact, and I'm going to give you a little shit, even the fact that you think you do it more than most is evidence that you don't do it enough, right?
You're probably absolutely right.
And that's not. I'm sounding like I'm giving you shit, but I'm giving us all shit.
But you're making a good point.
If we think that we're also altruistic, that we're also unselfish, that we know, this is the most important part, that we know so much about someone else's story that we can speak on it, we're not doing it right.
So how do we know?
We don't. That's the point. You never be satisfied. You'd never know, and you can never be satisfied that you know about other people's shit or other people's greatness or other people's anything.
So we all have to admit that we just don't know.
We just don't know. And listen. A tiny example of that is, like, I grew up in Arlington, Texas, which is relatively diverse. I went to a school where I wouldn't have, it was not the majority anything, white, black, Vietnamese, whatever, okay? I say that now from a different perspective, because while I was there, I probably didn't notice. Looking back on it, I say that, but who knows? Like, your perspective changes so much over time.
Yeah.
I can't remember it being very whitewashed. I know I had close friends, of different races and whatever. I mean, people that I still know, right? So I never heard until I was out of school, like into college, and I can't necessarily remember it, but I remember being adult and hearing people make jokes about fried chicken and watermelon, right?
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, what? Like, that's not... I don't even remember thinking that's not. I remember not getting the joke at all. Like, I didn't get those jokes because I had never heard that that was a stereotype about people, right?
Yeah.
Which is, I remember saying to someone that said something about how well I was raised, that I had never heard those type of jokes or stereotypes. But does that speak to how well I was raised, or does that speak to how sheltered I was?
Yeah, sheltered.
Right. And isn't, as a person who is not racist, a person who does not, or generally tries not to, let's not be too, like, does not subscribe to stereotypes, generally tries not to do that. How do you know that white privilege exists, right? If you're white and you're not racist and you have, let's say, friends that are black, but they don't talk to you about that necessarily, how do you know that white privilege exists? How do you figure that out?
Well,
how do you figure that out?
So this is something that
yeah, it's not rhetorical. I really want you to answer it. It's not rhetorical.
Well, this is my answer. Is I hated doing this because it's not popular, and I guess what I mean is I didn't really want to catch any heat for saying what I'm about to say, but I kind of don't care as much now. Where I just said, you don't know what another person's going through unless you get in their shoes or admit you don't know. How we just had that whole little piece, right? And we're always giving white people hell about that, black people. We're saying, you don't understand what we're talking about. You're this. You guys don't get it, blah, 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 right? We're always saying that.
Right.
You know what the other side of that is?
Tell me.
We got to get in their shoes. We don't have to. But to understand the situation better, you get in a white person's shoes. How do they know? How would they know? Like you just said. How would they know? How would they know white supremacy is not a thing? Like how do you know?
Yeah, and especially, I have more to say, but let's touch on that white supremacy is not a thing. Until very recently, within the last, we'll say, November 2016, until very recently, how did white people know that white people that are not white supremacists, how did they know that was still prevalent or a concern even?
Yeah, you hear white people say things like, oh, it was all good until Obama got elected.
Well, you also
through
hear other
Trump.
white liberals say, yeah, you hear white liberals say, though, that when Obama was here, this wasn't going on, or that this president is the one that's making this stuff happen or perpetuating this stuff. But it's the same. For as many white people as you heard say, like, how has the world come to this? You heard a lot of non-white people say, the world has been this, but now it's in your face.
Now you get to see it.
Right. So how do you know? And I'm not giving anybody a pass. Don't get me wrong. This comes back to never being satisfied with your own story, never being satisfied with hearing other stories, always needing more, like always trying to be in someone else's shoes. So I'm not giving anyone a pass. I am just saying, though, from a perspective of people who don't get outside of their box, how do they know? They're also watching TV shows and movies. These white savior movies are still, what is that, the Green Book that they just made, where people are still telling the same. That's what I mean. People are still telling the same stories about white and black people that they have been for, when was 1950? 70 years, 60 years ago? the 1950s, 60s, they started. Let's talk about Mad Men again. If you look at the progression of that show and how much changes over that time period, which I know that is not real life, but it is representative of real life. Those conversations that were starting to happen in the 60s about having black people in the workplace with white people, those things were starting to merge together during the civil rights movement. That's the last time white people had to check up on this. Like, had to. They were required to because it was there all the time, right?
Yeah.
Until now. So if you're not looking outside yourself at other people's stories, there's no reason for you to feel worried about this stuff. And if you're a white person with white children and white parents and a couple of black neighbors that seem okay and nothing's going wrong with them, what reason is there for you to get outside of your happy little life? Even if you're a white liberal and you think as soon as we get this guy out of office, everything can go back to normal, because that's what some people think.
So then I got a question for you. Man, I don't really know how to ask this. I don't want to say it's a good thing Trump got elected, because a lot of bad's come from it, and a lot of people have been hurt and killed, in my opinion. I mean, do you think it's a good...
Do I think it's a good thing?
Do you think it's a good thing? I guess is what I'm trying to ask. I take issue with it because people have been hurt by it, but those people aren't connected to me directly. But I believe that I can sympathize with them to some degree, or empathize.
Do you think it was a bad thing? On that note, so if we're saying that it's a good thing this guy got elected because he's pointing some things out to the people who didn't know about it,
right?
Then doesn't the same question apply? Is it a bad thing that Barack Obama got elected? Because doesn't that give the semblance of progression?
Yeah, it definitely... God, that's so complicated because symbols are important.
Yeah, listen, I'm going to tell you something, and this is going to sound real white savior liberalist, but I'm going to be honest. When in November of 2008, I was going to have a baby on December 31st of 2008. So I was pregnant with Dylan, watching Barack Obama get elected. If you don't think that symbolism did something to me, like as a mother, yeah, symbolism is important. I'll say that.
Yeah.
But
nothing's black and white.
Nothing's black and white. And I do want to clarify, to answer your question, do I think it was a bad thing Barack Obama got elected? Absolutely not. Do I think it was a good thing this idiot got elected? Absolutely not. But I will say when Trump got elected, I said something then that I think and I hope applies. It gets further and further away from applying every day. But when he was elected, all I could say was I want to choose to believe that this is the pinnacle of... This is the thing that wakes us all up to what is really happening, to make us get out there and do something and not let things like this happen. And I'm going to be a little elitist here, but there is, and I think these things, it's going to sound like it's not, but I think these things are intrinsically related. The anti-intellectualism that has been happening since at least the 2000s. I mean, maybe forever, but that has been so rampant. It's not cool to be book smart. And I'm going to misquote someone here, but there's someone that said the anti-intellectualism is steeped in this idea of freedom, that your ignorance and your stupidity is as important as my intelligence. That's not mine. Someone said that. I can't name them because I don't know it right now. But that is everything to me. This idea that freedom, which I subscribe to, like that, we're not doing it right yet, but the ideals that this country states to be founded on, that's what we're aiming for still, right?
Right.
So the idea that freedom includes your stupidity and your ignorance is as important as my studiousness, my interest in other humans that are not like myself, and my intelligence. That's not it. It's not okay for you to be, it's not your fault if you're stupid. It's not okay for you to be ignorant.
Yeah.
And the idea, and it's really shown with that election, how the poorest of people helped to elect this man. The people that he cares the least about are the ones that helped to elect him. And that is their ignorance, because he said the things that they like to hear. That's not to say every politician does that and all of us fall prey to it. If you think Barack Obama didn't say some things that weren't true, that he didn't follow through on, that we all don't love him for, then you're as bad as anyone else. We all fall prey to hearing what we want to hear. But the fact that the poorest people in the poorest parts of the country, because their faces are white and they like what this guy had to say about that, they're the ones who elected him, and they're the ones getting hurt a lot by it. I won't say most. That the disparity between what they believe and what exists is terrifying.
Yeah.
That's the danger. So I think that this to me, when he got elected, I thought this is what happens when people are so ignorant and they refuse to study anything outside of, I don't even mean politics, anything outside of themselves and see, or even themselves in some cases. You're not studying that the thing that's making you poor is the system that you're voting with.
Yeah, but it's an emotional decision. It's not even they're not even thinking. It's like, it's tribal.
Yep.
It's
Well, and I'll say something else, and this is maybe controversial, but Kamala Harris is someone that people are emotionally standing behind, and her track record of how she's been as instrumental as the Clintons in keeping Black and brown people in the corporate prison system. And that's not anything she talks about, because that's not a good idea, but her track record speaks to that.
Well, well, go ahead.
I mean, emotionally, are we interested in having a Black woman run this country for the first time ever? Sure. Yes. Like, I didn't mean to sound flip about that. Yes, I'm interested in that. This particular one, no, she doesn't cut it, because just the same way the Clintons being Democrats didn't cut it for me, or Hillary when Hillary was running. These people that we're talking about, the Clintons, Kamala Harris, many others that are Democrats, are very responsible for the amount of Black and brown people in the prison system right now.
So I got a question about that, because I've been having this debate with my wife and a few other people where, and I heard Dave Chappelle mention this, and I'm putting words in his mouth because I'm assuming this is what he meant, but he talked about imperfect allies all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that, looking for this perfect, ideal person to support your cause or to vote for or to believe in, like, it doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because, like, I see people going after Biden a lot and going, like you said, going after, is it Kamala or Kamala? I don't know how to say it.
I don't know either, actually.
Kamala, I don't know.
Apologies to her for the mispronunciation of her name, but not for calling out her politics.
Yeah. And so for things she's obviously done and should she be held accountable for. And I'm already starting to see all this, like, Democratic, like, infighting, and I'm like, oh my God, we're going to end up with Trump again for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
do we just pick the lesser of two evils?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I know that.
I mean, we can't have him in there, but we can't. I mean, we can't, right? We can't.
I guess I know the answer to this is that our bipartisan system is what's bullshit.
It
I
is.
hope it's fine. I'm cussing. Okay.
No, you can fucking cuss all you want.
but also, does that bipartisan system end in the next, what do we have, 2 years? Not even a year? Does that bipartisan system end now? Did it end when we needed it to, when it was a cut between Bernie and Hillary? It's not going to end that quickly. So your question is a valid one. Do we take...
We have to take the lesser of two evils. We have to, right?
Well, let me say this. I'll say in the history of the world, not the world, the history of this country, how many times have we not, as a people, how many times have we not had to take the lesser of two evils? Probably not very many. Probably zero. A lot of us who are the age of you and me probably believe very strongly that we did not take the lesser of two evils when we voted for Barack Obama. Which I admit, I was voting for someone that I believed in. So that is a time when I feel like I didn't do that. However, those little kids you see in cages, that was implemented by the Obama administration. So we're blaming this guy for that. We need to blame our government for that. Mm-hmm. That was happening when Barack Obama was in office. And we can say we don't know how much he had to do with it, but then we got to say we don't know how much this guy has to do with it, right? Mm-hmm. They are all politicians. So you're right. We're going to take the lesser of two evils. For me, though, it's almost worse to be liberal, right? Because we have all these ideals of this perfect world we think is going to exist. And we don't think we're asking for too much. Please don't put children in cages. Stop worrying so much about people that come into this country when the people that started this country lampooned everyone else, right? Everyone who was already here. We don't think we're asking for too much, but we're also, if you're a woman, I won't say if you're a woman. Some liberals' most important point is pro-choice activism. Some people's most important choice is stop the corporate prison system. Not enough people, by the way. That needs to be our most important choice. But anyway, stop the corporate prison system. We all have these different most important things to us, mm-hmm. and they all seem right. But people are more. If the hot button issue is being pro-choice and getting rid of anti-abortion laws that are popping up again, then your girl or your guy, Joe Biden or Kamala or whoever, says that's the thing they're most worried about or most concerned about, then that's the guy you vote for. And that's no different than being poor white people in Mississippi that think Trump is their guy because he said a few things about whatever industry he said he was going to put force back into. If we're just focusing on one issue or our most important issue, then we're still choosing emotionally, which is not what we need to be doing.
But you're asking people to do all kind of work they're not going to do.
They're not going to. Yeah. And that's why not to defend conservatives. That's why relatively intelligent conservatives, not the ones that wanted this guy in office, but that's why they say, I'll go back to Katrina. I have heard people say, and this is not a widely talked about thing, but what happened in Katrina wasn't about Hurricane Katrina as much as it was about the levees not being up to snuff, right? I mean, you know that, right?
I can't speak intelligently about it. Okay. I've heard all kinds of things.
So, yeah, I don't want to speak like I know I don't want to speak like I know everything about it, but there was a lot of conversation surrounding the levees being not enough to handle anything that happened basically in the city. And the conversation surrounding that is how much money the New Orleans government was given to handle that situation and that they did not. Mm-hmm. Okay? So that's why Spike Lee made the movie When the Levees Break or Broke. That was surrounding this conversation. Mm-hmm. So So if the elected officials in New Orleans didn't do what they were supposed to do to the levees to keep the people safe, then the elected officials in New Orleans are responsible for what happened during Katrina, right?
Mm-hmm.
Except they're elected officials. So that means the people are responsible for what happened during Katrina. That's flip, what I just said, and that's reductive, what I just said. But if conservatives say, and this is what some of them say, the reason they don't think, for instance, New Orleans should have gotten federal funding for the situation in New Orleans is because the government already got money from, federal money and local money to take care of the levees, and levees broke because they didn't take care of that because they spent it on whatever else. Then are the people who elected those officials responsible for what those officials did not do? If you want to make it as simple as that, where are we at? What do we do? The only thing is to educate yourself about the people you're voting for. And even though it's dismissive and reductive, how do we not talk about that conversation? How do we not, if we believe that we're a country run by the people, which we know we're not, but that's our aim, to be a country run by the people, and we're not active participants in our democracy, then aren't we at fault? I mean, and there's arguments to what I just said. For instance, the Electoral College.
Yeah, it's so. I don't know how to really talk about this.
Yeah. Okay. So what I just said was a little bit. I'm playing devil's advocate just a little bit. It's not exactly wrong what I said because it's how this structure was set up.
Yeah, I'm saying there's so much happening.
Yeah. This structure was set up like that. That's how it's supposed to work. How does that not happen? For instance, for president, we have the Electoral College. We know that if we voted by popular vote, this man would not be president. And we know, if we know anything about it at all, we know that the Electoral College is the reason this man is president. That it's archaic, that it might not even need to be abolished, but it absolutely needs to be updated. So if you start to understand the Electoral College, then you start to understand. That's the first step. Understand that so that you can start to understand how we can somehow change that, because that has to do with how our federal government happens. But when you take it down to what I just talked about, you're talking about local government, local voting, local people. That is your local, the way you vote locally is, from what I can understand, the most democratic system we have if we want to talk about politics. How you vote locally in your own little town, in your own little county, in your own state, right? Because the Electoral College is not at that level. So your vote counts in your town, even if it doesn't count in your United States of America. So we have a responsibility to educate ourselves. But even the argument to that is there are systems in place that don't allow some people to educate themselves that want to. There are systems in place that make it where people don't even understand anything I just said.
Now you're getting into the stuff that I'm thinking about when you're talking about,
right.
Like Katrina and those people. Like how many voted, how many had the opportunity to vote, like all the other things that come into that. I'm like,
yeah, those are the important conversations. And those are the conversations. So if you're a conservative and you say what I just said about Katrina and those people are responsible because they didn't vote, that's the simplest way conservatives that are still intelligent have an intelligent conversation about this. They think it's the people's responsibility. The people didn't vote for who they should have voted for, and now they're sitting there. The same can be said, I don't agree with this, but the same can be said about the people in Flint. Did these people vote for the right people to keep their, right? You can say that. How dismissive is that? People died in Katrina. People are dying in Flint. Like, that's too dismissive, right?
Right.
And also, you have to talk about the reason these people didn't vote or didn't vote what they think is correctly or whatever, because of these systems that are in place.
Yeah, you're now having a conversation about the system.
Right.
And now you're asking the right questions.
Exactly. But are even liberals asking those questions? Are they really? Because they talk a lot about let's take care of these people from Katrina. Let's get water to these people in Flint. All good things. I agree with that. Let's do it. But they weren't talking before about and they still don't talk enough about how do we educate these citizens equally so that people are voting for what they want in their city.
Yeah, now you're asking people to be honest.
Right. That's dangerous, right?
And they're not going to tell them themselves, and they're not going to want to do all that work. The politicians.
Because no.
So, Karli,
No,
if I
not
hear
at
you
all.
correctly, you're saying we're fucked. No, I'm kidding.
I mean, I hope not. That's the thing. That's the part that is.
Okay, because
If I truly thought we were fucked, I wouldn't take the time to say any of this, right? I'm saying this because if I can understand some of this, which of course I don't understand at all, of course there's more for me to know. But me and you, as arrogant as we might both be, we're still very simple people. We're not the most educated people. We're not the most anything. We're just regular.
Right.
So if we can take the time to think about this and consider things and ask questions and continue to ask questions and to make it our business to ask these questions and to try to look for solutions. If we regular people can do it, then people smarter than us got to do it too. Yeah, I can't lose my idealism. That's what I'll say. As fucked up as it is, I can't.
I hear you. And the crazy thing about it is, like, I'm genuinely like listening to you talk about these things and how you're talking about them, and I don't even know how to articulate this, but like just kind of recapping just a little bit here, because you said a lot of shit that I think is important. Okay, so so you're saying, God, is it? I feel stupid sitting here saying, is it too much to ask people to think?
Well, it's not a stupid question, because apparently it is.
And it's crazy because there's so much emotion, real emotion tied up in a lot of these conversations. So you talk about Katrina, for example, and then you talk about, who was elected, who voted, who didn't vote. Now we have this disaster. Okay, and that's a tough thing to say and to talk about, like you were saying.
Well, yeah.
Then, if you ask those questions, and you got to ask those other questions, and it's like now you're asking the right questions and real questions that are important and that matter. It's just interesting to hear you talk about how this leads to that real thing and how this real thing leads to that real thing, but it's so hard to get there.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then another thing I'll say just about Katrina, for instance. Or Flint. You can logically and rationally say all those things I said conservatives believe. I'm speaking from the intelligent conservatives I know that I disagree with, but that I believe are smart enough to make valid points. The thing where that gets messed up is you have these people that say, let's ask these questions, and let's expect these people to be intelligent enough to educate themselves to vote, but they don't ask those questions. I mean, we established they don't ask those questions about what systematically makes that not happen. But also, they seem to, the people that think that way, seem to dismiss that once the levees break and the people are drowning, none of that shit matters anymore because we got to save the people. That once the water isn't clean, none of those questions about what happened a few years ago to make that happen matter anymore because we got to get these people clean water. You can believe that people should be educated and should educate themselves, and it's their civic duty and duty as citizens to educate themselves and vote for their best interests. But once they haven't done that for whatever reason, which we know those reasons, we know that there's systematic oppression is most of those reasons. But if what we're saying is they're just fucking idiots, they're fucking stupid, it's not their fault, or it is their fault, they're just stupid. What difference does it make once people need clean water and not to drown in an ocean? It doesn't make any difference anymore. Because it's become a disaster and you have to fix it.
Yeah.
And that can be applied to anything. It's become a disaster that statistically there is an exorbitant amount of black and brown people in the prison system than there are white people. How did we get there? Oh God, a lot of ways. Like we could talk about that for a long time. Mm-hmm. It's an emergency now though. It's an emergency now. So it doesn't matter how we got. It matters how we got there in the sense that we need to be educated to not get there again. But right now, how do we fix it? And for starters, an important thing to think about, like in the simplest of ways, if people are allowed to have entire multi-million-dollar businesses selling marijuana legally, why are there people in jail for selling a bag of weed?
Right.
Like that, those little things that people are talking about like they're no big deal, those are part of this emergency.
Yeah. But even I'm thinking, like you said, even with it being the emergency, if we're able to, I don't know, even fix a portion of the emergency and save lives and help people, going back to what you were saying, how did we get here in the first place? We got to know how that happened, and we got to learn about that and study that so it doesn't happen again, right?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, but that's not all we have to do. Because if all we do is study how it happened, if all we do is study how it happened and prevent it happening again, we're still not fixing that it's still happening right now. And that's no better than people that say, well, they should have voted right for their city.
Well, now you're going to have to do a lot more work and problem solve and think ahead and, I don't know,
right.
all that other stuff.
Right.
Where I don't even think we're nowhere near. Well, no, I won't say that. I mean, I don't know. I think the media does a lot of they do a really good job of portraying the wrong things, and like we don't know what's really happening out there because they don't tell us. And you'll hear stories like for global warming, for example. Like there's all kind of, I think, companies or people out there doing things that are trying to fix that, but they don't tell you about that. What they tell you is, all this shit that's going to get you fired up and stirred up in the media, and so you think all these other things are happening and these things are important. Like, tell me what you think about this. For example, like, if we were to believe the media, I think you would think that, I don't know, like, we're being overrun in this country by Trump supporters.
Mm-hmm.
What are the numbers on those people?
Yeah, I don't know what those numbers are, but I know that we're not being overrun by them because I know that the popular vote told us we weren't.
You know what I mean? There's like 30 of them,
yeah.
and I'm exaggerating.
Right.
But
the other thing that you guys... Go ahead, sorry.
No, I'm just saying that's the lie they sell you in the media that gets you all riled up and get you to watch.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about that is, well, just a brief note about global warming. Part of the problem in that conversation is we are talked to as citizens by groups that are against global warming, that are trying to help the situation. We are talked to by them like it's our fault. Stop driving your car. Stop throwing away K-cups. Stop doing blah, 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 blah. Not to say that, sure, don't be wasteful. But do you think we as citizens and the trash that which is a lot, but do you think that's the issue? Do you think it's not these corporations, these factories, it's not our everyday little shit that's causing this problem? Not to the degree they'd like to make it out to be. It's funny how it's put on us, just like I was saying before, it's put on us like, oh, you should have voted right. Oh, you should have used reusable K-cups. Oh, you should have this. Oh, you should. Now the world's over. When, let's be honest, the corporations and the lobbyists that support those corporations and talk to these, or that are supported by these corporations and that talk to these politicians about what they should, these are the people that's causing our problems. So does it come back to voting? How educated are we supposed to be? If Barack Obama is saying everything we need to hear, do you know why he's saying everything we need to hear? You know why AOC, do you know why she's saying everything we need to hear? Because she has the information, and I'm on her side. But she has the information that sounds good to us. So that's what she talks about. Every single politician, we want to be emotional and we want to be trusting of them. Even the good guys, they're still corporations that are paying lobbyists to talk to these people so that they talk about the things that we want to hear so that we support the corporation. And the corporations know what we want to hear because they're privately owned, they have more money than God, and they can do research and find out what we want to know about. So when we say, oh, you should have voted correctly, or you should educate yourself more about who to vote for, that's even hard for smart people, for really, really smart people, because of what we're being fed, exactly what you said, because of what the media is doing to us.
Yeah.
But that's part of our responsibility, too, because I'll bet on your social media, the news outlets that you pay attention to, the people that you talk to, or the fact that AOC has been on my timeline on Twitter every single day since she had anything to say, that's part of what I've contributed that makes that come back to me. Twitter is not feeding me Fox News propaganda because that's not what I want to hear. And Twitter is not feeding white supremacist Huffington Post because that's not what they want to hear. So we've gone from, if we just had TV, for instance, not too many years ago in Dallas, Channel 8, I think this is still true, Channel 8 and the Dallas Morning News, which is the only major newspaper in Dallas, they were owned by the same people. And Channel 8 was the most popular news station in the city. So everyone's news was coming from the same corporation, because they were owned by a corporation called Belo. So everyone in Dallas, most of the people in Dallas, because it was the most popular, were watching WFAA and reading the Dallas Morning News, and those were their sources of news. That came from the same corporation. And however many years ago that was, 10 years ago or whatever, I was like, well, more than that now. I was like, this whole city's getting its news from the same corporation, and that's not okay, right?
Right.
20 years ago, I'll say. But now we have all these outlets that come to us. I can get news from anywhere in the world by reading Twitter. I don't have to even look for it, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So even though I have all these options, I'm still getting fed the things that I want to hear. I'm still seeing things about Barack and how we want him back. I still see things about AOC and Beto, because those are the people I associate with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that comes into my feed. And that means everybody who's watching Fox News is getting fed Fox News and every other version of that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's crazy that it doesn't matter how well the media, how singular they are, or how multifaceted it is, we're all still getting the same thing we want to hear.
I mean, I don't know what to say to that other than do more work and do more research.
Right. It all comes back to that, right? It all comes back to we got to do more research. Well, how do you do more research when you're living at the poverty level and you got to do your job every day and a second job and take care? I mean, like, it is absurd. It's a case for socialism, isn't it? And I'm not necessarily supporting that. But you understand why people want to sink into that, to be taken care of a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, that's so fucking complicated. I mean,
right.
It is, but it isn't in my head. But then again, like you said, you got to add in all the other things and life,
yeah,
and what you're doing,
it isn't
and systematic
that
racism,
complicated, right?
All the things working against getting information,
right? All the things working against someone because of the color of their skin, someone because of how much money they have, someone because they're a woman, someone because they're, and everyone's got their own emotion. The things I care most about, right, have to do with the things I politically care the most about have to do with my freedom and the freedom of my child and all the things that surround that. And then secondly, for everyone else that I love. And that is still, what I just said is still completely emotional. No matter how rational I am about it, still completely emotional.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a question for you, actually, about because I think this is really interesting. How differently do you, if you think about being stopped by the police yourself, before you were a father, do you feel like you were afraid? If you got pulled over, do you feel like you were afraid?
Wait, you're saying, how did I feel about being pulled over by the police before I was a dad?
Yeah, when you were a single man.
Yeah.
You were afraid?
Yeah.
Think about in however many years it's going to be, your son getting pulled over by the police. I bet you I don't even have to finish that sentence. I bet you don't even have to. I bet you I made your heart stop for a second. Like,
well, me and Amy were just having the conversation right before this phone call because we were talking about Now They See Us, or whatever it's called. And we were like, and I was actually going to ask you this question because, you know, Dylan's a little older. We were going to say, like, damn, like, how are we going to prepare Hayden for the cops, you know? And is that telling him, you know, comply? If they want to take you into the station, go with them. Don't fight. Just say two things to him. Say, I want to talk to my mom and dad, and I don't waive my right to a lawyer. I want to talk to my mom and dad. I don't waive a right to a lawyer. I want to talk to my mom and don't say nothing else to them. And then we were like, even if they beat you, like physically just start beating on you, withstand it if you can. I want to talk to my mom and dad. I don't want my right to a lawyer. And I was going to ask you, like, what do you... Well, you don't have to tell me this on air.
No, there's not a lot. I mean, I don't have to get too specific. Let me say this. When you said, I wanted to ask you this because Dylan is a little older, that made my heart stop. So let's think about that. Dylan is 5 feet tall now. We just measured him the other day. He's 10 years old. Probably he might look a little older than that because he's tall.
Yeah.
He's not little right now. He's probably not ever. He's going to be a big dude.
Yeah.
How far are we away from... I mean, I'm scared right now. Don't get me wrong. How far are we away from I have to be terrified every time he goes out of the house?
Yeah.
Should we say 3 years? Because I don't think I have that long. But the reason I asked you the question about if you feel differently thinking about your son being pulled over or yourself is I know a lot of adults, men who say, like, they're more pissed off and less afraid. Like, probably the being angry is steeped in the fear, but once you have a kid, it's a whole other conversation. Like, if you're a, and I don't want to speak for anyone, I'll just speak experience of people I know. I've known a lot of men that are just angry about the cops, that if they get pulled over, it's like, hand them your shit, don't talk to them, be like, do what you're supposed to do, but don't be afraid. Don't be, just deal with it. You can handle it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think men have it in them, especially young men have it in them to think they can handle any situation, which is terrifying. And I think it's got to be different from the way you feel in that situation compared to how you feel about your kid being in that situation. That's why I asked you that question. I wonder how.
Yeah,
how
I'm like, live.
Right.
Do what you have to do to live.
Yeah.
How do we keep him alive?
Right. I mean, here's the other funny thing. Like, do you remember? Do you remember in Get Out when they get pulled over by the cop when she's driving the car?
Yeah, I think I know where you're going.
And the cop is like asking him for his ID, and she's like, he wasn't even driving, blah blah blah, whatever she said.
Yeah.
Like she was, like, kind of confronted the cop a little bit.
Yeah.
But then they were driving, and he said something about, like, that was so hot that he did that. And I was like, that's the most unrealistic thing I've ever seen.
That would have never happened.
No. And I don't, like, I'm not saying that would never happen, because I've said some wild shit to cops out of the ignorance in the way I was raised, okay? I don't think any dude would ever be like, "That was so hot, what you did."
Well, yeah, I'm
Because
saying.
I've been told in situations where, oh God, maybe I don't even want to get into this. I've been not in the car necessarily. Once I was at a restaurant with a group of people, and someone ran out on their check at another table. So the people I was with, there was more than a few black people. Like it was like probably they would considered it a black table, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we walked out, they were like, "No, hold on, you have to stay here. We called the police because people ran out on a check. We don't want anyone to leave." Well, no one ran out on a check at our table, of course. It was a different table. A bunch of white people are leaving the place because they don't want anyone to leave, you know. But we're the only ones standing out in front of this restaurant like, "No, you can't leave. We just wait till the police get here so we can figure this all out," right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously it's a ridiculous situation. Obviously it's not an out of the ordinary situation, unfortunately. But, and this is a lot of years ago, like a lot of years ago. So I'm like, mouthy. So I was like, "Why are you asking us? Why are these people walking out and we're still standing here?" And the people I was with were like, "Hang on, just shut up. Like, just be quiet. We'll just stand here and wait." And I was like, okay. And then the police get there. A couple of cops, and I don't have anything bad to say about them. They were nice guys. They realized we were being kept there, and they realized the reason we were being kept there, even though we had nothing to do with it. But when they walked up, I was like, "Hey, we weren't even with these people. I don't understand why we were, just saying the things I would say."
Mm-hmm.
And the guy we were with a group of people, but the guy I was with took my hand and leaned over into my ear and said, "Shut the fuck up." And yeah, he was right. Shut the fuck up. Because, and again, that's the difference between the way I was raised to think about those situations compared to someone who's been in those situations. And that's only white privilege that thinks I can tell the police, "Hey, blah, blah," So,
Yeah.
he told me, there's another time. I mean, there's been times, especially when my son's dad and I were together, where he was pulled over, and before the cop walked up to the car, he was like, "Don't open your mouth." Like, just knowing me and, So what I find hilarious about, for instance, that scene in that movie is I don't think any dude thinks that's hot for you to start trying to have a conversation with the police about injustice
Yeah,
right now.
that's the part. I was like, I don't know that would ever happen. Like, I don't know any guy would ever say that. I think he'd be like, "You're gonna get us killed." Like,
right.
Stop talking.
Right. So, but that's like a funny couple of anecdotes to say, like, obviously we know I talk a lot, obviously we know I have a lot of strong opinions, and I think a lot of things that I can say to anyone and blah, 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 blah. So when I've been pulled over, I have literally said, a cop told me to have a nice day after he wrote me a ticket, and I was like, "How the fuck are you going to tell me to have a nice day?" He was like, "Ma'am," and just walked back to his car. So, and again, that was a lot of years ago. Or my dad saying they can't do anything to you, you shouldn't be afraid of them, they don't hold any, like, they serve you, da, da, da. Those things are not anything, obviously, I would ever say to my son. And even what you just said you would say to Hayden, or what you're thinking about saying to Hayden, that scares me. Like, go back with them to, like, I mean, obviously, but go back with them to the station, and if you can take the beating, just take, like, what if they don't? What if they just shoot first? Like, it's terrifying. And I don't want to be too one-sided about this. I don't think, I believe that the media feeds us these stories in certain ways too, right? So, although I think this is a rampant problem, police brutality, I also think, I think we should look at statistics a little more closely. I think the bigger problem, not the bigger problem, I think a problem that goes hand in hand with this is that police officers are not coming out and saying, "That's not the way we handle business. We don't support what that cop did." Because they can't all be like that. I know they're not all like that. So why are they not talking about it?
Yeah.
But it's the same way. Why did the NRA not have things to say about Philando Castile, who was a gun owner, who followed the law?
So, yeah.
You know, like,
now you're talking about all the things that, all the other stuff you were talking about, like all the systematic stuff.
Right.
Now you're getting into those details.
Right. But yeah, I'll say, if I think that only 2 cops out of 100 are the type of cops to do this, which I don't necessarily think that, but if that's what I think, that's still terrifying when you're talking about my son being in a car by himself, or someone I love being in a car by himself.
Yeah.
That's too many. That's too much.
Yeah, I know.
And as for the things I say to him, this is the thing, the way you speak to your children about any subject is the way you speak about this, right? So it starts with such small conversations. So the same way that in very subtle ways, I learned what I learned about the cops, which is I don't like them and they can't do anything to me and blah, 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 which was not necessarily the right thing to learn and certainly not what my son needs to learn. But those weren't things my father outright said to me. They were like ways he behaved. So the way things get across to your children are in much smaller ways than you think. So those conversations have to start really young. Before now, like he's 10, some of these conversations have already happened. He has to be well aware of it by the time it's an issue. But just like everything else, the things you want to make your children aware of are also the things that can prevent, can hold them back, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I am talking to him about a little from now, if I'm talking to him about when you go into a job or when you go into school, you have to work twice as hard as blah, blah, blah. When I have those conversations with him, in what ways is that helping him for me to talk like that to him? And in what ways is that hindering him?
Yeah.
Because in what ways do we get hung up on those things that might not matter? They might matter, but they might not in various situations. And when you talk to your kid about the police and you talk about what they might do to you or how they might mistreat you, what happens when a good cop comes up to pull your kid over because he missed a stop sign or made a wrong turn or his tail light is out and he's just saying your tail light's out, and your kid is so afraid of what's going to happen that shit goes awry for another reason.
Yeah.
I mean, it's dangerous ground, not just out there in the world, but it's dangerous ground right here in these conversations.
Yeah, I mean, shit, man. All valid points. I think it's not ha-ha funny, but we were supposed to be talking about interracial dating.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't know how this was going to go. I got no problem with how it went. Like, shit, Karli. I mean, you said some things. So I'm good.
Yeah, I mean, I think, isn't this conversation about our future and our children worthwhile?
Yeah, this is an extremely important conversation to have, and really tough. Like, God, like you said some things that are just really things that you don't hear. Like you said, we're not even asking the right questions in a lot of these conversations we're having, and that's not something a lot of people want to do because it's just uncomfortable. You know, and it's super uncomfortable, and it's highly emotional, because people are dead. You know,
right.
With any of these topics, you know, and that's somebody's everything. Like, God forbid somebody happens to somebody we love. I mean, that's what else is there? You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's really hard to talk about these things, but I still feel like we got to talk about these things. And I guess the fact that, like you said, me and you are doing it, and we're not the smartest people in the room, you know, there's got to be hope.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, but I also think we have to ask the right questions, but we can't believe that, and we can't believe that we have the answers to them. But also, we can't just stop at asking those questions. And we can't just stop at talking to people who agree with us. Like, that's really important. We can't just stop at talking to people who agree with us.
Yeah, that's self-serving. I don't know what that does. I do think though that that a lot of people miss is, I think a lot of people, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but a lot of people say, like, what's the solution to, like, a lot of these problems? What's the solution? How do we fix it? I think personally the solution is to just start talking about it. I think that's where we start, because, like, we can't even have a lot of these conversations. And I think,
but I think that's
go ahead.
If the solution is for people to start talking about it, but also to, like I said, talk to it about people that don't agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
Intelligent people, like, don't talk to a brick wall. Like, that's another thing. Like, if you're arguing on the internet with people, if you're talking to people that, I mean, we're discerning when we have conversations with people. We are able to discern to talk to people who agree with us, right? So we also have to be able to discern, talk to people who disagree with you, but who also have open minds and who have working brains, right? So talk to the people that are intelligent that you disagree with. And like, I can say that my family, I'll stick to just me and my dad. My dad is conservative. I think I told you that before. He's not Trump supporter conservative. He's more like still believes Ronald Reagan was a good president conservative, which is also emotional, but still a little more intelligent than what we're dealing with now. We disagree on so much. We agree on a hell of a lot, but we disagree on so much, and we have forever. And I don't love anyone besides my son more in the world than my dad, right? We're so close. I value everything he has to say to me. You talk to the people you love that you disagree with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's where you start talking to people that you disagree with. And people are a little afraid to do that because they're afraid that you can't disagree and still love someone. And that's so foreign to me. But can't you just be respectful and have a disagreement with someone you love? The only way to do this is to get different viewpoints. Two things: get different viewpoints and also ask the right questions. We want to sit around and talk about solutions and talk about how much we agree with each other and talk about what's systematically wrong. Yes, ask those questions. But ask those questions like, are we supposed to vote for any Democrat just to get this man out of office? Or are we supposed to, what are we supposed to ask those questions? That's a good enough question without an answer. It's okay to ask questions you don't have the answer to also.
Mm-hmm.
Just make sure they're the right questions.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, not to keep rehashing things, but I'm just kind of recapping a lot of things in my head that we talked about. Like the point you made, or you kind of touched on and brought up, like with Katrina, for example, like the voting on a local level. And like, I don't know, I've been to New Orleans once, and I can't speak to you intelligently about it, but like that was a horrific tragedy, right? Like of epic proportions. And I feel like people don't even talk like that happened now. It's like the Vegas shooting. Like they talk about these things like they didn't, like, I don't know. It's just, I find it weird that these things are just kind of not in the conversation.
Right.
A lot more than I think they should be. And so like going back and talking about like, well, who did these people vote for? Did they vote? Now you're asking, well, are they able to vote? What times a day are they able to vote? Are they at work? Who are the candidates? It's just, those are not easy conversations to have, I don't know, man. I'm just kind of rehashing a lot of that in my head, and I'm going to have to think about a lot of that just more. And I don't know. That's tough shit.
Yeah.
Like I can't.
I mean,
I don't want to. I can't.
Yeah.
I can't blame the people. You know.
No. I made that whole. I kind of gave you a whole diatribe there. I don't blame the people either. I mean, I don't.
No.
think I need to keep for the record
I'm not saying
that's not what I was
you
saying.
did. No.
I was giving you a point of view.
Yeah.
But I also give you the point of view that when it comes down to it, again, after something so tragic has happened, that stuff doesn't matter anymore, and it still seems to matter so much to conservatives when we talk about if this city needs federal aid or, all that. They're still talking about they spent that money on the levees wrong. And I mean, maybe you didn't hear a lot about that, but there were discussions about that. FEMA was a bigger problem then, and a lot of people were talking about that. But it's just all those things I said, which are rational, and that's the way they think about it. You can't. We're sitting here saying people are voting emotionally, and we take issue with that because they're not being rational and they're not doing their research. But we're still talking about humans, and emotional matters. Like you're talking about saving the lives of people. Like it's hard to. The reason I can't agree with they voted for this government and this government did that, so now the people are to blame, is because there's still everything we said. Obviously, there's systematic issues there, but even if there weren't, there's still human beings that are in a disaster situation now that we need to save. And when it comes down to it, when I say something like that, isn't that strictly emotional? That I want people to live? Like, I mean, you can't take emotions out of it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man.
I'm sorry I didn't talk about the thing you wanted me to talk about.
No. I mean, if you're willing to come back, I mean, we can do it then. But like I said, this was a fucking conversation.
If you don't get too many messages about how I talked forever and dominated the conversation and think I know everything, then I'd be willing to come back.
Well, you know what? I'll say this, and hopefully this doesn't get me in trouble. I have a variety of people in here, and some talk more than others, and others you kind of have to kind of lead them a little bit or kind of drive the conversation. So it's nice. And it's fine. I want to tell you this and kind of end on I don't even know if this is a fucking happy note, but I do this thing at the beginning of each podcast where I go to one of my playlists and I hit shuffle, and whatever song comes up, and it's supposed to be just kind of like this fun, silly thing that kind of exposes you because like Beyonce, Single Ladies will come up or something, and then I just look like an idiot. Okay, but
no, that suits you. But okay.
So what I did for this episode in honor of you, I went to a Prince playlist. And
to a what?
Prince.
Oh, it was his birthday yesterday.
I didn't know that. Because like I said, you're a big Prince fan. I was more Michael Jackson. And it's funny that I feel like people feel like they have to choose almost like, what Prince?
I mean, people do have to choose, I guess. I think Prince is, that'll be all day. Go ahead.
No, so I was just saying, I went to a Prince playlist I found, and I hit shuffle, and Sex Shooter. You know that song?
Wait, say it again?
The song is Sex Shooter, I believe.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay.
That's the song that came up.
Okay, all right.
And so I think I'm going to do it again when I get off with you here. I'm going to go back and hit shuffle. So I don't know. I just want to tell you that in honor of you because I know you're a big Prince fan.
I listen, when Prince died and I was crying at work, you were the only one that checked on me. I'll literally never forget that moment.
Because I knew, I'm like, oh man, that's Karli's guy.
Yeah. I'm actually, listen, I know I'm a cold-hearted person, but it melts my icy heart for you to say that you played Prince before this and after this. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, like I said, if you want to come back, I'll definitely have you come back and we can talk about some other shit. I feel like you got a lot to say about a lot of stuff, so.
Yeah, I feel like Amy and I have a lot to say to each other, too. Like, I feel like we can relate
Carly,
on a lot of things that we haven't had the chance to relate on.
we're already there. We just got we got to nail you down, man.
Listen, first of all,
you're probably
no,
right down the street right now. Where are you?
I'm not. I'm in my home north of there.
Okay.
But no, I'm hoping to come back. We don't even have to do this. We could all just go to dinner like we have years ago. Like, it'll be good. It'll be good.
Okay.
I'd like to hear, I think, I care for you a great deal, but we all know that Amy is much smarter than you. And she and I are long overdue a conversation.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Thank you so much, Carly.
You can come too.
I would hope so, but she might. You got to stay home with Hayden, Matt. So I don't know.
Right.
I'm like, what the fuck?
That might be better. We'll figure it out.
All right. I'll talk to you later.
Okay.
All right. I'll see you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right. That was Carly. I'm going to go ahead and go to it's not my playlist. I found it on Tidal.